In 2025 alone, the United States lost over $12 billion in international visitor spending, according to the World Travel and Tourism Council, especially in Los Angeles. Canadian visitors used to pour in over $400 million a year, but today, they're simply gone, just because their own government warned them not to vacation here, and with them, millions of jobs, meals, and memories vanished. That leads to even the biggest of our restaurants, such as KFC, Pizza Hut, or Subway's having to shutter their doors. Following is a rising question. When the cheapest meal you had left disappears too, what do we still have in the future? This is the Downturn Report, where the truth gets personal. And today, we will reveal 10 big restaurant chains going out of business as America's $100 billion tourism collapse. Let's begin with a symbol of American freedom. Number 1, McDonald's. Do you remember the time when every airport goodbye ended with a McDonald's meal back to the good old days? When a few dollars still bought you a cheap and secure meal, no matter where in America you stood. It would be shocking if I told you that in 2025, even in the heart of Las Vegas, you couldn't find that familiar spot anymore. McDonald's once thrived on global movement, with over 14,000 stores in the United States. Hundreds were positioned within walking distance of airports, casinos, tourist hotels, and beach boardwalks, more than just fast food. These locations served memories in a quick bite, but according to Restaurant Business and QSR magazine, over 500 US McDonald's has now shut down permanently since 2020. But the quiet shock is most of them were near major tourism zones, places where they once helped build the empire. What's fueling this silent vanishing is deeper than flavor or marketing. In 2025 alone, international tourism spending in America is projected to fall below $169 billion, down $12 billion from the previous year. Canadian spending in Los Angeles has plunged by more than $400 million. European bookings to US cities are dropping fast. And in China, government advisories now warn travelers to stay away entirely. Tour buses once parked outside McDonald's in Orlando or Santa Monica, now idle in Barcelona or Osaka. This collapse isn't random, it follows a pattern. Long visa delays, stricter border checks, tariff retaliation. Tour groups have canceled not because they stopped loving America, but because America made it harder to love. While France, Mexico, and Japan simplify entry, advertise deals, and offer smiles at customs, America tightens and retracts. McDonald's, which once lived on the rhythm of global foot traffic, is slowly being abandoned by the world. For workers on the ground, the disappearance is so devastating. Older part-timers, students, and single parents who depended on flexible hours near airports and theme parks are suddenly without income. Tour guides no longer swing by for lunch breaks, and in cities like Flagstaff or Fort Lauderdale, entire neighborhoods built around tourism lose their last affordable lunch option. One less burger joint might sound trivial, but for many, it's the difference between a $5 meal and going to bed with an empty stomach. Yet with fewer fast food options, following fewer late-night drive-thrus, less soda and less processed grease, Americans, without realizing it, may now be nudged toward cooking more, walking more, and choosing better. If McDonald's no longer sits on every corner, Americans might be a healthy country again, and that change, while painful, could quietly save lives. Still, the ache remains. Because when even the most iconic restaurant in American history begins to vanish in silence, what happens next? And as we turn to the next chain on this list, the silence only deepens. Number 2, Starbucks. You used to find it in every memory. The airport farewell, the first morning in a new city, the comfort cup after a sleepless flight. But in 2025, Starbucks slowly locked its doors in many places and no one noticed. There was no one left to serve now. Starbucks once defined American tourism, with nearly 20,000 US locations at its peak. It greeted travelers at nearly every airport, train station, theme park, and downtown street corner. Tourists counted on it not just for caffeine, but for comfort. Its locations near Times Square, Central Park, and Disney World accounted for more than 18% of domestic revenue. But by spring 2025, that entire web had unraveled. Internal company reports confirmed over 150 closures, mostly in tourism-heavy zones like downtown Seattle, Hollywood Boulevard, and Fifth Avenue. According to the World Travel and Tourism Council, the U.S. lost over $12 billion in international visitor spending this year alone. In Las Vegas, where 38 Starbucks locations once operated within a 10-mile radius, only a handful now stay open past 3 p.m. Some are completely gone, but the unraveling began long before the tourists stopped coming. In 2022, Starbucks faced intense backlash after reports surfaced of the company union busting, allegedly firing workers who organized, blocking votes, and violating labor protections. Then CEO Howard Schultz was called to testify before the Senate, drawing national attention to the brand's anti-union stance. Public trust eroded. Boycotts began. The brand that once marketed itself as a progressive safe space suddenly felt alienating to the very workers and customers it relied on. So when the wave of tourism collapse hit in 2025, driven by visa bottlenecks, strained diplomacy, and rising global distrust, it didn't just disrupt Starbucks, but crushed an already fractured brand. What remained was an overbuilt empire with no crowds to serve. And the fallout touches every corner of our daily life. Thousands lost jobs without notice. Surrounding businesses, from bakeries to taxi drivers, lost the flow of visitors that once passed through Starbucks doors. In cities like New Orleans and San Francisco, entire neighborhoods now sit without a single open Starbucks after sunset. The windows stay dark. The smell of coffee no longer drifts down the block. While Dunkin stayed close to local customers and Dutch Bros thrived on drive-through accessibility, Starbucks bet everything on the mobility of the world. And when that world stopped moving, so did its heartbeat. The green siren still hangs above some streets, but more as a ghost than a guide. When even the green siren of Starbucks can't survive America's empty airports and ghost towns, it's not just a brand that disappears. It's the smell of travel, the warmth of routine, and the last place that still remembers your name. Keep watching, because one of the biggest reasons behind the next brand's collapse is now in the prison cells. Number 3, Subway. What happens when the sandwich you trusted on every road trip now, nowhere to find Subway once, had more than 25,000 stores in America, more than McDonald's, more than Starbucks, more than any other name on the map? But in 2025, the tour buses stopped, the tourists didn't return, and the quiet unraveling of America's most familiar meal began. At its peak, Subway was the undisputed king of fast food locations in the United States. Its branches were everywhere, beside gas stations, inside airports, tucked near bus depots and malls. For years, it was the default lunch of long-haul drivers, European travelers, and visiting families. But by early 2025, that dominance collapsed. Subway's total U.S. store count fell below 20,000, down more than 5,000 units in less than a decade, according to Business Insider. The closures were concentrated in tourism-heavy cities like Orlando, Las Vegas, and San Diego, where foot traffic once guaranteed survival. In New York, Subway used to serve more than 2,000 tourism workers daily, but near the Port Authority, locations have shuttered block after block. In Las Vegas, locations near casinos saw revenue plunge more than 30% as tour groups vanished. In Florida resorts, Subway restaurants sit idle. The Canadian and European visitors who once made up lunchtime rushes have taken their spending elsewhere, such as Mexico, Japan, Spain. But Subway's downfall didn't begin with the collapse of tourism. It began with the collapse of trust. In 2015, the face of their advertising, Jared Fogle, was convicted of horrific crimes involving minors. The brand cut ties, but the stain lingered. In 2017, a CBC investigation claimed Subway's chicken was only 53% real meat. The company denied it, but consumers had heard enough. Lawsuits followed. Franchisees complained about high fees, poor support, and broken promises. Some banded together in collective legal action. By the time the global tourism freeze arrived in 2025, Subway was already staggering. And now, the pain ripples outward. Most Subway stores were family-run franchises. Today, many of those stores only open 2 or 3 days a week. Some no longer open at all. Owners struggle to pay utilities. There's no more footlong for $5. Night shift workers, rideshare drivers, janitors, people who relied on those sandwiches, are now facing $10 or $15 meals or skipping lunch altogether. Meanwhile, competitors that avoided overexpansion, like Jersey Mike's and Jimmy John's, have managed to stay afloat. They kept roots in local neighborhoods, leaned on loyal customers, and sidestepped the chaos of international tourism. It begs the question, did Subway grow too big, too fast, and forget what mattered? Because when the sandwich you bought before every road trip vanishes, it's not just a brand that's gone, but a routine, a memory, a part of the American highway that once welcomed the world. And as we peel back the next layer of this collapse, we arrive at a chain that once promised royalty, but now barely holds its crown. Number 4, Burger King. Once the king of roadside comfort, Burger King was where travelers grabbed a hot Whopper after a red-eye, before a tour bus ride, or between shopping bags at outlet centers. But in 2025 at Miami's South Beach and New York's Grand Central, those red and yellow booths now sit empty. The grills are cold. The phrase "have it your way" has vanished, not because the world changed, but because the people it served simply stopped arriving. In the 2000s, Burger King was the go-to for millions of tourists. With over 7,000 locations across the United States, it positioned itself beside gas stations, next to ports, inside airport terminals. It fed European tour groups, domestic road trippers, long-haul drivers. But between 2021 and 2024, Burger King quietly shut down more than 400 US stores, according to QSR Magazine and CNN Business. The closures clustered around places once defined by tourist footfall: Orlando, Las Vegas, Miami, New York. Las Vegas alone saw its 16 Burger Kings near the Strip, and major hotels dropped to just 6. Locations near Disney World, South Beach, and NYC's Grand Central Terminal saw customer traffic drop more than 35%. The international travelers who once made up over 20% of Burger King's traffic in key areas disappeared, pushed away by travel advisories from Canada, China, and the EU, strict visa bottlenecks, and a shift in global tourism toward Asia and Latin America. But this collapse wasn't born in 2025. The fractures came earlier. In 2022, Burger King faced widespread backlash for its sluggish response to LGBTQ+ rights, especially as competitors like McDonald's and Wendys made visible moves in support. The brand was also criticized for controversial ads abroad, such as the Whopper with Holy Bible campaign in Brazil, that sparked religious outrage spilling over into US communities. Franchisees, too, were fed up high operating costs, lack of support during the pandemic, and corporate mismanagement led many to shut their doors or file lawsuits. By the time tourism began to collapse, the brand's foundation was already crumbling, and that failure spills into everyday life. The workers hit hardest immigrants, teens from low-income areas. Retirees on late shifts were laid off without notice or support. In places like Barstow, California, Laughlin, Nevada, and Naples, Florida. Burger King used to be the last place to grab a hot sandwich for under $5. Now travelers are left with overpriced supermarket snacks or nothing at all. For many locals near tourist zones, a $1 burger was dinner, and a job at the fryer was survival. In contrast, brands like Five Guys remained grounded, built on neighborhood loyalty and personalized service. Shake Shack, though pricier, maintained customer trust by focusing on food quality and clear identity. And as Burger King retreats from cities and highways, the question grows louder: why are the smaller, more honest players surviving while the former giants fall? If the king has lost his crown in America's biggest cities, then what does that mean for the thousands who once counted on him for a hot meal, a second shift, or just a $1 sandwich before another long day? But our journey doesn't end here, because the next name on this list once sold comfort in square boxes, now left unopened in darkened storefronts. Number 5, Wendys. Once the last warm meal for night shift workers. Wendys sat quietly beneath glowing street lamps across America. It was the final stop for tour buses rolling into Las Vegas, a haven for tourists at Miami beaches, and a quick bite near national parks. But in 2025, those square burgers are vanishing. At night, the lights are off, the windows are empty, and the comforting voice of quality, done right, has gone quiet. In the 1990s and 2000s, Wendys expanded quickly on the strength of its simple promise: honest food at a fair price. With over 6,000 US locations, it became a go-to for students, road trippers, and families. Stores near Greyhound stations, coastal attractions, and downtown tourist zones in San Francisco, Miami, and Las Vegas served millions annually. It was a brand people trusted not just for what it sold, but for what it stood for. But in 2025, the travelers disappeared and Wendy's followed. Internal data and QSR reports reveal that over 185 locations have closed since early 2023, with closures accelerating in the first quarter of 2025. Near Disney World in Florida, revenue has dropped by nearly 35% year over year. On Fremont Street in Las Vegas, stores that once stayed open late now close before dusk or have shut down entirely. The culprit, a massive drop in European and Canadian tourists. Average international customer spending is now 40% lower than in 2019. Still, this wasn't a collapse caused by travel alone. Wendy's brand had already been fraying. In recent years, the chain was criticized for remaining silent during major human rights movements, especially when younger customers, particularly those from abroad, were calling for vocal support. The brand's image of integrity began to blur. Allegations of employee mistreatment in certain southern states, while limited in scope, fueled skepticism. For a brand built on trust, even a small crack was enough to shake the foundation. So when international tourism began crumbling, Wendy's lost more than foot traffic, it lost belief. The chain, once seen as humble and community-focused, had already drifted. The global collapse didn't destroy it. It exposed what had already faded, and the consequences are brutal. Night workers who depended on Wendy's wages to cover utilities are now unemployed. In towns like Flagstaff, Arizona, and Charleston, South Carolina, when the store closed, families lost their routine $5 dinner. There's no replacement, just overpriced supermarkets or an empty plate. The chain reaction is devastating. No tourists, canceled tours, empty bus stations, no Wendy's customers, lost jobs, entire neighborhoods quietly starving. Meanwhile, competitors who never bet on the traveling crowd in and out, with its local focus, and Arby's, with its flexible model, continue to operate steadily across second-tier cities and rural regions. They never tried to be everywhere. They just stayed where they were needed, which raises the question, did Wendy's forget who it was serving was fresh, never frozen, not enough to stay rooted when the world stopped spinning? If even Wendy's, the honest burger built from the heart, can't survive America's abandoned highways and empty theme parks, what happens to the everyday workers who never stopped believing in it? And as we move forward, we face a chain that once fed billions through a single red bucket, but now finds its spices losing flavor in an America that stopped coming back for seconds. Number 6, KFC. There was a time when KFC signs lit up the night in Orlando and San Francisco's Chinatown. But in 2025, those red buckets have gone dark. The tourists who once lined up for a taste of American fried chicken have vanished, and with them, the warmth of a shared vacation meal. KFC used to thrive on international traffic, especially from Chinese, Korean, and Japanese tourists, with over 3,900 US locations. Many sat directly along major tourist routes from Las Vegas to Honolulu. But by mid-2025, revenue at KFCs in tourist zones had dropped over 32% compared to 2019. In Orlando, at least 27 stores closed or cut hours in the past 18 months. In San Francisco's Chinatown, stores only open at lunch nights or completely empty. KFC's troubles didn't begin with lost tourism. A 2018 scandal in the UK saw over 600 stores shut down due to a chicken shortage, shaking global trust. In the US, since 2020, smaller portions and recipe changes triggered backlash. On Reddit and TripAdvisor, complaints poured in. Meanwhile, Yum Brands pressured franchisees with rising fees. Without tourists, many couldn't survive. For communities near International Drive or the Las Vegas Strip, a $6 KFC combo once meant a hot meal. Now, closed counters mean lost jobs, especially for older workers, Asian immigrants, and students. One shuttered KFC doesn't just darken a storefront, it silences a whole street. When a bucket of chicken once fed a family on vacation, and now there's not even a counter left to order from. It's not just fried chicken that disappeared. It's the shared moment, the work shift, the end-of-day warmth that quietly left with the tourists. Number 7, Pizza Hut. For generations of American families, Pizza Hut was the taste of celebration. After a day at the amusement park or a long flight, a red-roof dine-in store meant hot, cheesy comfort. But in 2025, many of those iconic red booths sit cold and empty. Once the largest sit-down pizza chain in the country with over 7,400 locations, Pizza Hut has now fallen below 5,200. Tourist-heavy cities like Orlando, Anaheim, and Las Vegas have seen dozens of closures. International travel to the US dropped 9% this year, and Pizza Hut, deeply tied to that traffic, couldn't recover. But the collapse isn't just about tourism. Franchisees have long accused Yum brands of forcing them into unsustainable discounts. Younger tourists turn to Domino's and app-based options, leaving Pizza Hut behind. Controversies like backlash in conservative states over LGBTQ+ reading events only deepen the divide, without tourists. The small towns that depended on Pizza Hut suffer quietly. Part-time workers, single moms, retired seniors all lost steady income. In towns like Kissimmee or Pigeon Forge, the local hut wasn't just pizza, it was dinner families could actually afford. When a Friday night pizza used to mean joy, rest, and reward, and now it's just a locked storefront under flickering lights. What else are we losing when the tourist doesn't come back? Number 8, Taco Bell. Once the savior of late nights after flights, clubbing, or casino wins, Taco Bell's 24/7 spots in tourist cities have gone dark not because ingredients ran out, but because people did. For decades, Taco Bell served young travelers, students, and night shift workers, cheap, fast, and open late. It was the last stop before bed, in places like Las Vegas, Miami, and Orlando. Stores near airports and attractions fed thousands weekly. But with a near 20% drop in tourists from Mexico and Canada in 2025, those registers have gone silent. Since 2023, over 180 Taco Bell locations have closed, especially in tourist zones. Orlando's outlets near Universal saw sales plunge 30%. Miami Beach and downtown LA outlets cut hours or shut down entirely. But the fall began earlier. The 2011 lawsuit over Taco Bell's meat filling only 36% real beef shook consumer trust. Labor groups slammed working conditions for night crews. And while flashy campaigns like Live Moz tried to rebrand, many older Americans saw it as out of touch. Now, in parts of California and Nevada, there's no place left open after dark. Gig workers and the homeless are left with nothing. A $3 taco used to mean relief. Now, it's a memory. Number 9, Dunkin. From Boston to New York, Dunkin was once the first stop after the train, a hot coffee, a warm donut, a greeting that felt like home. But in 2025, many of these stores sit dark behind dusty glass quiet in a city that never used to be. Dunkin was the pulse of the Northeast, serving airports, ferry terminals, and subways before sunrise. With over 9,000 U.S. locations, it was the essential stop for taxi drivers, international tourists, and students. But now, the trains keep running with fewer passengers. According to Restaurant Dive, stores near Times Square, JFK Airport, and Boston Common saw a 28% drop in revenue compared to 2019. Morning hours, once the brand's strongest, now bring silence. Some franchises have shut completely or operate only on weekends. While Dunkin avoided major scandals, its slow sustainability transition, like clinging to styrofoam cups, alienated younger, eco-conscious visitors. Franchisees have also complained about fixed pricing rules and poor corporate support during post-pandemic cost spikes. The result, in working-class neighborhoods like Newark or South Boston, that $3 breakfast has vanished. Many now skip the meal entirely or pay double elsewhere. For countless communities, the disappearance of a morning coffee shop isn't just about caffeine, it's about losing one of the last affordable beginnings to each day. Number 10, Applebees. Once the go-to dinner after Disneyland, the backup meal near your hotel when nothing else was open, Applebees was that cozy fallback. But in 2025, entire stretches of airport roads and resort towns now sit quiet. Their glowing Applebee's signs switched off for good. The neighborhood grill has lost its neighborhood. From its peak of over 1,800 U.S. locations, Applebee's was a casual dining icon, woven into the rhythm of family trips, tour buses, and post-flight meals. But by mid-2025, nearly 300 stores had closed. Locations near Disney World, the Las Vegas Strip, and San Antonio Riverwalk reported revenue drops between 35 and 45%. Why? Because the travelers stopped coming. International tourism plummeted after countries like Canada, China, and Germany issued warnings against visiting the U.S., triggering a sharp collapse in tourist spending. Culturally, Applebee's also stumbled. A leaked memo in 2022 exposed a local executive celebrating rising gas prices as a way to hire cheaper labor, sparking national outrage. Add to that its outdated tech, weak delivery presence, and younger visitors walked away. Now, in places like Reno and Kissimmee, shuttered Applebee's locations leave dark corners where families once gathered for working servers, often single parents or students. The closures were sudden, devastating. What happens to a nation when even the restaurants we grew up with begin to vanish silently? One by one, this wasn't just about food. It was about connection, comfort, and the last affordable meal for millions. As America fades from the global tourism map, local families are paying the price in lost jobs and cold dinners. If you felt any part of this story, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who remembers what it used to be like. Because maybe the only way to stop the next closure is to finally start the conversation.